I'm going to play for you a video clip of what Michael Wolff said Epstein told him was in the safe and what he showed the author was in this safe. Okay, so that's great. So wouldn't it be great if FBI subpoenaed the estate of Jeffrey Epstein for all that information?
The estate is under no obligation to provide that material, even pursuant to a subpoena. That's a great point.
Yeah, that's just false.
Okay.
That's just false. You're the FBI. You can subpoena the information from the estate, and you better do that.
On September 17, 2025, the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation sat before the House Judiciary Committee for the second consecutive day of congressional testimony. Subject was the most scrutinized criminal case in modern American history, Jeffrey Epstein, and in the space of 5 minutes, a single congressman from California named Ted Lieu asked 3 direct questions that the director of the FBI could not directly answer it because the questions were complicated. Best, the questions were simply that gap between simple questions and evasive answers is exactly what this video is. A Booty AM Global sketch, and if you want the clearest factual breakdown of what actually happened in that hearing, what the documents show, and what the numbers behind this entire investigation reveal, then subscribe right now because this story has 6 million pages of government documents behind it, and almost none of them say what the public...
Have you asked to talk to Michael Wolff?
You raise a great point. I haven't personally asked to talk to Michael
Wolff. Has the FBI asked?
But the FBI, I'll get back to you if the FBI specifically
so Michael Wolff has
ever.
About 100 hours of testimony of Jeffrey Epstein. Wouldn't it be good for the FBI to interview Michael Wolff?
I'm not saying they haven't. I just don't know.
Has FBI subpoenaed the tapes that Michael Wolff has conducted of Jeffrey Epstein?
I don't know.
Was told to expect before we get to that hearing room. Let us start with what the documents actually show, because the scale of this investigation is something most coverage has not properly conveyed. In November 19, 2025, President Trump signed into law the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Law gave Attorney General Pam Bondi 30 days to release all unclassified records held by the Department of Justice, the FBI, and U.S. Attorney's offices related to Jeffrey Epstein and his accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell. The DOJ discovered when it began. That review was this 6 million pages of potentially responsive documents, 6 million pages across 5 primary source investigations, the Florida and New York criminal cases against Epstein, the New York case against Maxwell, the investigations into Epstein's death, and multiple separate FBI investigations. DOJ missed its December 2025 deadline. In January 30th. 2026, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche announced the release of over 3 million additional pages, including more than 2,000 videos and 180,000 images, bringing the total release to approximately 3.5 million. Pegastat left roughly 2.5 million pages unreleased. More than 200,000 pages were withheld or redacted, citing attorney-client privilege and other legal protections. Democratic members of the House Judiciary Committee wrote immediately that the DOJ claimed to have identified over 6 million potentially responsive pages, but after releasing only about half of them, says strangely that it has fully complied with the law. On February 15, 2026, Attorney General Bondi sent a letter to Congress declaring that all Epstein files had been released consistent with the act and included a list of over 300 high-profile names appearing in the documents. Co-author of the Transparency Act, Republican Representative Thomas Massie called for the DOJ to also release internal memos outlining past decisions on whether to charge Epstein and his associates. No, here is where the financial picture becomes extraordinary. In our Ron Wyden of the Senate Finance Committee expanded his Epstein investigation in January 2026. With a new probe into the Bank of New York Mellon, his committee found that Epstein had moved $378 million in and out of Bank of New York Mellon accounts through 270 wire transfers. Bank failed to identify a legitimate business purpose for any of those transactions. It waited more than a decade before flagging the transactions with the Treasury Department a potential violation of the Bank's Secrecy Act. That $378 million figure is just one bank. Democratic Representative Jamie Raskin had already told the House Judiciary Committee that for banks J.P. Morgan, the Bank of New York, Bank of America, and Deutsche Bank had collectively flagged $1.5 billion in suspicious transactions related to Epstein's crimes to the Federal Government Committee voted 20-19 along party lines to block a Democratic motion to subpoena those for banks for the underlying records, and there was one more finding buried inside the January 2026 document release that drew almost no cover. Jeffrey Epstein was the subject of a previously undisclosed Drug Enforcement Administration investigation, a 5-year-plus deep probe targeting Epstein and 14 other individuals for suspicious money transfers possibly linked to illegal narcotics. Nobody had known about this de-investigation before the files were released, not the public, not the press, not the members of Congress who had been investigating Epstein for years. That is the documentary foundation of this case. 6 million pages, $1.5 billion in flagged transactions, $378 million through a single bank, a secret de-investigation, 95,000 photographs obtained from the Epstein estate by the House Oversight Committee, and an FBI that conducted years of investigation across multiple administrations is what was sitting behind Kash Patel when he walked into the House Judiciary Committee on September 17, 2025. To understand why what happened in that hearing room matters, you first need to understand who was doing the asking. Lieu represents California in the House of Representatives. Before entering politics, he was a judge advocate, general officer in the United States Air Force, a military lawyer who conducted investigations and prosecuted cases in a system where evasive answers have consequence. She later reached the rank of colonel in the Air Force Reserve before retiring. In 2021, he holds degrees from Stanford University and Georgetown Law. Sits on the House Judiciary Committee. That background is not a biographical detail. It is the reason Lieu's 5 minutes were structured the way they were. Was not looking for a usable cliff, was building a record. Only verifiable fact at a time. Across the table sat Kash Patel. Patel was confirmed by the Senate as FBI director in February 2025. He had already testified the previous day before the Senate Judiciary Committee on September 16th, and was now in his second consecutive day of congressional testimony. The subject everyone knew would dominate both days was Epstein, and Patel knew I had prepared. What he had not prepared for was the specific structure of Lieu's approach. Lieu did not bring argument. She brought a video, a publicly available recording of journalist Michael Wolff describing what he said Jeffrey Epstein showed him from inside a safe in 2017. Before we get to what happened when that video played, let us be precise about what Lieu established first. Because the foundation he built in the opening 60 seconds of his questioning is what made everything that followed so significant. Lieu asked whether the FBI had searched Epstein's Manhattan residence in 2019. Patel confirmed it had. Lieu asked whether among the items found was a safe. Patel said he did not have the catalog of evidence in front of him. Pause on that for a moment. Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation testifying before the House Judiciary Committee about the most publicly scrutinized case under his oversight did not have the evidence catalog of his own agency's 2019 search in front of him. You preceded the FBI find a safe. Patel said he would accept the Congressman's representation, a yes-ned, a confirmation from his own knowledge, would accept the Congressman's account of what his own agency found. New York Times had reported the safe and its contents on July 28, 2019. It was front-page news. At the time, it was part of the formal charges filed. That year, the FBI director said he did not know that phrase "I will accept your representation" became the governing pattern of the next 4 minutes, and Lieu was about to use what he had just established. Mitchell Wolff is not an obscure figure. He is the author of Fire and Fury, which sold 5 million copies worldwide and which Donald Trump attempted to stop with a cease and desist letter before it was published. Is also by his own account and by the account of multiple journalists who have investigated the question, the person who spent the most documented time with Jeffrey Epstein before Epstein's arrest in 2019. Wolff estimates He conducted approximately 100 hours of recorded interviews with Epstein. Across more than 30 sessions between 2017 and 2019, he has said publicly that Epstein described Donald Trump as his closest friend for a decade. He has said he attended sessions at Epstein's Manhattan townhouse and that during one of those sessions, Epstein retrieved photographs from his safe and spread them out. In November 2024, Wolff released a recording on his Fire and Fury podcast in which Epstein can be heard speaking at a restaurant in 2017 about his relationship with Trump and the inner workings of the Trump White House. In February 2025, Wolff appeared before the House Judiciary Committee himself. In November 2025, Democrats on the House Oversight Committee released email exchanges between Epstein and Wolff that were among more than 23,000 documents the committee received from the Epstein estate in response to a subpoena email from December 2015 showed Wolff warning Epstein that CNN was planning to ask Trump about his relationship with Epstein and asking how they should craft an answer for Trump's archive is real. Recordings are wealthy, have been discussed in major newspapers, testified about in Congress, and reported on by the Associated Press, ABC News, The Daily Beast, and dozens of other outlets. Lieu played a clip of Wolff describing what Epstein showed him in that 2017 session. Then Lieu paused the clip and asked Patel directly, "Are there any photographs showing Donald Trump with individuals connected to Epstein's operation?" Patel said, "No." You asked how. He knew. Patel said that information would have been brought to light by multiple administrations and FBI investigators over the course of the last 20 years. CNN reported this exchange verbatim on September 17, 2025. Lieu stopped him, said that is just not true, and then he gave Patel a specific counter-exemplar birthday card. The Wall Street Journal had disclosed that Trump sent Epstein a card on his 50th birthday in 2003. The card included a drawing of a naked woman and text that reportedly included the phrase, "May every day be another wonderful secret." Trump denied writing it, but the point Lieu was making was not about the card's content, it was about how it surfaced. Wall Street Journal broke the story, not the FBI. Epstein estate provided it to Congress when subpoenaed, not the FBI. Here was documented evidence of significant material connecting Trump to Epstein that had not been surfaced by any of the multiple administrations and FBI investigators. Patel had just cited Dan Patel's response raise a great point that acknowledgement is worth sitting with carefully. Patel had just argued that 20 years of investigation by multiple agencies would have surfaced any significant material. You gave him one verified documented example of significant material that had not been surfaced by the FBI and came to light only through outside journalism and a state disclosure under congressional subpoena. The FBI director agreed that it was a great point that is not the language of someone confident in the completeness of his agency's review, that is the language of someone whose own argument just collapsed in front of him on the congressional record. Lieu moved to the Tepeshes. The FBI subpoenaed the tapes that Michael Wolff conducted of Jeffrey Epstein. Patel said he did not know would it be good for the FBI to interview Michael Wolff. Patel said he could not say they had not already done so, just did not know who would get back to Lieu with a specific answer. Consider what that means in practice. As the journalist holding the largest known archive of on-record Epstein material, 100 hours across 30 sessions, is not an obscure source. His recordings have been publicly reported on for years. His appearances before Congress are documented. His emails with Epstein were released by the House Oversight Committee under subpoena. Question of whether the FBI had made contact with this journalist or sought to obtain his archive was not an obscure investigative question, and the director of the FBI said he did not know you moved to the Epstein estate's birthday card had come from the estate, not from the bill. You asked whether the FBI should subpoena the estate for everything it holds. Patel said the estate is under no obligation to provide that material even pursuant to a subpoena. You stopped him immediate. Teleth it is just false. He said you are the FBI, you can subpoena the information From the estate, and you should do that, Patel said. That is literally not how it works. Lieu said he was moving on. That disagreement was never resolved in the time available, but its stakes are enormous. If Patel is right, the FBI has no legal path to materials. The estate holds beyond what it voluntarily discloses. Lieu is right. The FBI has had that path all along and has not used a tone of those to things is true. And the FBI director's response that the estate has no obligation left the room without a resolution. Lieu closed with the client list. This is where the contradictions inside the government's own record become most visibly. In February 19, 2025, an FBI supervisory special agent wrote in an internal memo while media coverage of the Jeffrey Epstein case references a client list, investigators did not locate such a list. During the course of the investigation, that memo was released as part of the January 2026 document dump and reported by the Associated Press in February 2026, but in early 2025, Attorney General Pam Bondi had told reporters on camera that the list was on her desk and under review. Those two statements, no client list found, and the list is on my desk, came within weeks of each other from two different senior officials in the same administration. That contradiction was never publicly resolved. Lieu had to specific names he wanted to ask Aboudis Prince Andrew on the Epstein client list. Patel said the material related to Prince Andrew had been made public. Donald Trump on the Epstein client list. Patel said the FBI had released an index of names and the index would speak for itself. Those are not answers to the questions that were asked. The index is not a client list. The index is an index. Lieu was asking about to specific names and whether they appear on a document the FBI director had already confirmed exists. A yes or no question asked twice and twice. Patel directed the questioner to an index rather than answering it. If the answer is no, it is one word. Patel did not say it. Lieu closed his time by telling the committee that it was a significant red flag that the FBI director could not say whether Donald Trump was on the Epstein client list. Chair called time 5 minutes, and what was left on the record was this for phrases from the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. He will accept your representation. He don't know, he can't say they haven't. The index will speak for itself. Each phrase technically responded to the question asked at none of them answered it. No, let us be precise about what the documents actually showed, because this is where expectation and reality diverged significantly. The Associated Press conducted a review of the internal Justice Department records released in January and February 2026. Their finding, published in February 2026, was this: the FBI collected ample proof that Jeffrey Epstein sexually abused multiple underage girls, but it found scant evidence that he led a sex trafficking ring serving powerful men. A prosecutor wrote in an internal 2025 memo that videos and photos seized from Epstein's homes in New York, Florida, and the Virgin Islands did not depict victims being abused or implicate anyone else in his crimes. An examination of Epstein's financial records, including payments he made to entities linked to influential figures in academia, finance, and global diplomacy, found no connection to criminal activity. According to a separate internal memo from 2019, the files released included mentions of prominent figures including Donald Trump, former President Bill Clinton, and Elon Musk. The AP was precise in noting that none of those individuals had been tied to wrongdoing by the documents. Epstein Files Transparency Act review produced documents organized into 12 separate data sets covering email chains, text messages, internal investigative reports, news articles, bank statements, wire transfer records, flight logs, and FBI interviews. Summarist House Oversight Committee obtained approximately 9,500 photographs from the Epstein estate under subpoena. December 18, 2025, Democrats on the committee released 68 of them. Among those were photographs of passages from Lolita written on a woman's body, a Ukrainian passport with details redacted, and text messages referencing an 18-year-old from Russia. Virginia Giuffre, who had been one of Epstein's most prominent accusers, died by suicide in 2005. Her family stated they were outraged over the Justice Department's handling of the file releases. Giuffre Family's response to the releases reflects a broader pattern across this investigation: the gap between what was disclosed and what the people most directly harmed by Epstein believed needed to be disclosed. And then there was the finding about the buried inside the January 2026 document release was confirmation that Jeffrey Epstein had been the subject of a previously undisclosed Drug Enforcement Administration investigation, a 5-year-plus probe targeting Epstein and 14 other individuals for suspicious money transfers possibly linked to illegal narcotics. This was not in the public record before the files were released, not reported, not disclosed, not surfaced by any of the multiple administrations and investigators that Patel had cited to Lieu as evidence of thoroughness. It was there in 6 million pages of documents waiting. It took a congressional disclosure mandate signed into law in November 2025 to surface. It is the factual landscape behind the 5 minutes in that hearing room, not rumors, not speculation. Against memos, financial records, congressional testimony, and verified reporting from the Associated Press, CBS, NBC, PBS, Al Jazeera, CNN, and the Wall Street Journal. Here is what the record shows and what it does note. After the September 17, 2025 hearing, the questions Lieu put on the record remained on the record. None of the 5 minutes produced new factual revelations about Epstein's crimes. What it produced was a documented account of what the director of the FBI was and was not prepared to confirm on oath about the steps his agency had taken in the most publicly discussed criminal case under its oversight. Let us be precise about what remains open. As of May 2026, the DOJ identified 6 million pages of potentially responsive documents and released approximately 3.5 million of them. Approximately 2.5 million pages remain unreleased. More than 200,000 pages were withheld or redacted. The co-author of the Transparency Act has called for additional release of internal memos on prosecutorial decisions for bank subpoena covering $1.5 billion in suspicious transactions was blocked by a 20-19 committee vote. With Michael Wolff archive of approximately 100 hours of recorded Epstein interviews has not been confirmed as subpoenaed by the FBI. The contradiction between the FBI's internal memo finding no client list and Attorney General Bonda's statement that the list was on her desk was never publicly resolved. D's previously undisclosed 5-year investigation into Epstein and 14 other individuals was unknown to the public until the 2026 file release. Each of those items is documented. Each of them is in the public record. None of them are accusations. She are the gap between what the investigation produced and what the public was able to verify. That gap is why the 5 minutes from September 17, 2025 continued to circulate in clips, transcripts, and commentary long after the hearing. Indeed, not because they produced a smoking gun. They did not. What they produced was something Washington often considers equally significant: visible hesitation on questions that carried straightforward answers. An FBI director who accepted a congressman's account of his own agency's evidence catalog rather than confirming it from his own knowledge. An FBI director who said, "I don't know," when asked whether his bureau had contacted the journalist holding the largest known archive of on-record Epstein material. An FBI director who declined to say yes or no when asked directly whether to specific names appear on a list he had already confirmed exists. Those phrases, "I will accept your representation," "I don't know," "the index will speak for itself," were delivered under oath before the House Judiciary Committee. They are on the Congressional record and they sit alongside the 6 million pages, the 100 hours of recordings, the $378 million in a single bank, the $1.5 billion in flagged transactions, the previously undisclosed investigation, and the 95,000 photographs from an estate that the FBI did not subpoena until Congress did it for them. That is the picture, not complete, not resolved, but documented. That is why Global Sketch is here to lay out exactly what the record shows so you can assess it for yourself without the noise. If this breakdown gave you genuine clarity on what actually happened and what it means for where this case goes next. Please subscribe to Global Sketch right now. Share this with someone who wants to understand what is actually in these documents and turn on notifications because the 2.5 million pages that have not been released yet are still out there, and when they move we will be here to break them down.